We have the top 16 results from the largest tournament ever. Champions League Tokyo on September 22nd had almost 5,000 players, and they're playing with some new cards that'll be released in Surging Sparks, as well as what we know as our Stellar Crown standard format. So let's get into it and look at these top 16 decks. We're going to work our way from the bottom up, and we are missing number 16 and number 10, which are Iron Thorns and Dragapult, but we do have other Iron Thorns and other Dragapult lists here available. Limitless TCG has collected 14 out of 16 of the top 16 deck lists so far. So we're going to start with number 15, which was Charizard Pidgeot. This Charizard Pidgeot list is following the common structure that we've seen throughout the past couple of months in Charizard lists. They've lowered down to a 3-1-2 line of Charizard EX, and then also plays a Night Stretcher. So Night Stretcher can kind of be thought as taking up that spot that the third Charizard EX would normally take. Of course, running the 2-1-1 line of Dusclops and Dusknoir. Dusclops and Dusknoir are just invaluable compared with Charizard and the way this deck plays. Not only because of Charizard EX's own Burning Darkness attack, which does more damage for each prize card your opponent takes, which Dusclops and Dusknoir forces your opponent to take prize cards, but it also activates Counter Catcher, and it can also activate Defiance Band, as well as the only brand new card in this deck, Briar. You can force your opponent down to 2 prize cards if you need to, so that Briar can be activated. Of course, Briar is this new supporter card that if your opponent's at exactly 2 prize cards remaining, and your active Terra Pokemon knocks out your opponent's active Pokemon, you take 1 more prize card. Looking at a couple of other list choices here, they're playing 2 Rotom V and a Lumineon instead of 1 and then 1 Cleffa. And for the energy lineup, they're playing 5 Fire Energy, 1 Double Turbo, and 1 Mist Energy. The Double Turbo can be used to attack with Pidgeot, it can be used to attack with Pheasantipede along with another Fire or a Mist, and it can also be used to allow Radiant Charizard to attack a little bit earlier, but for 20 less damage. Also noting that they're not playing Professor Tauros, so that double turbo energy can also be used to help retreat Radiant Charizard since it has a hefty retreat cost. We'll also notice here that they've cut down to 3 Buddy Buddy Poffin in favor of another Nest Ball, as well as playing 0 Stadium cards, but they are playing a Lost Vacuum, which can cover bumping that Stadium. Next at 14th place is Iron Thorns EX. Iron Thorns EX is a very simple deck archetype. They're just playing 4 Iron Thorns, so that ability initialization is always on. As long as it's in the active, Pokemon with Rule Box except future Pokemon have no abilities. So, as you can imagine, this is able to shut down a large portion of the top of the metagame in this format. From there, while it shuts down abilities, you just use Volt Cyclone turn after turn, doing somewhere between 120 and 160, depending on double turbos and future booster energy capsules. You've got Crushing Hammers to disrupt the opponent. You've got Canceling Cologne to allow you to get through wall Pokemon. And this also plays 2 Lost City to get rid of said wall Pokemon. So if your opponent has Mimikyus, you only need to get through it a couple of times, Lost City them, and then they're no longer a problem. And like I said, this was the second Iron Thorns in top 16, so both 16th and 14th place was Quad Iron Thorns EX. Moving on to 13th place, which is Lugia Archeops. This Lugia Archeops is playing 1 Dusk Ball, which actually hasn't been printed since Majestic Dawn back in the Diamond and Pearl era, but it was printed in the Paradise Dragon set, which Japan, that's their newest set as of this tournament. So yeah, Dusk Ball just kind of like the opposite of Great Ball. Look at the bottom 7. So it has a little more synergy with if your opponent Iono's specific Pokemon to the bottom of your deck, you can Dusk Ball and look for them. So maybe a little bit better than Great Ball because of that use. As for anything interesting going on in this deck list, they are playing a 4th Lugia V, which isn't always being played. And they're also playing Klefki. So Klefki can either be put into the active to slow down the opponent with Mischievous Lock, but it can also be used for its Joust attack to do 10 and discard all Pokemon tools from the opponent's active Pokemon. Really, I imagine this is in the deck so that you can push it active if your opponent has Iron Thorns, so that you can still activate Summoning Star, because Summoning Star is not a basic ability. Although, if they're playing Klefki, Fluttermane can also do that, but Fluttermane doesn't have the Joust to discard Pokemon tools, so I have seen Klefki popping up in a lot of City League Lugia lists as well. So it is not actually that rare to see this being used in Japanese Lugia decks in this current format. But yeah, on the deck as a whole, Lugia VSTAR is really strong if it gets set up. Chinchino is one of the strongest single prize Pokemon we have available. It does an absurd amount of damage when paired with Archeops's Primal Turbos. And then they've got a couple of basic Pokemon here as well: Blood Moon Ursaluna, Iron Hands EX, and the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX, which can be used to either Retreat Lock with Sob, or to try to knock out multiple Pokemon at once with Torrential Pump. Next, we've got Gardevoir in 12th place. This Gardevoir will be choosing to use Unfair Stamp as the ace spec, as well as playing 2 Technical Machine Evolution, no Rare Candy. They have not stumbled upon the Henry Chow technology as of yet so far over in Japan. This list looks incredibly typical. Supporter lineup, very typical Pokemon lineup. They've got Fluttermane, Screamtail, Drifloon, Cresselia, Klefki. They're playing no Manaphy, double Monkey Dory, double Dark Energy. Yeah, very, very typical. Not a lot to discuss here about this Gardevoir deck. However, we can talk about Gardevoir itself, not the deck list. Gardevoir is still a top tier archetype, I guess, somewhere around tier 2, between tier 1 and tier 2 maybe. It's still an incredibly strong deck because Gardevoir EX Psychic Embrace can power up single prize attackers every turn. And then you also have Monkey Dory to add some additional damage counters on the board, as well as healing for yourself to move damage counters around. And Gardevoir has, in the past at least, tended to do really well against 2 prize-focused decks, something like Raging Bolt. However, Raging Bolt now also has Briar, which can actually fight back into that prize trade that Gardevoir is able to put up with the single prizers. So Gardevoir definitely not where it once was compared to some of its high points this past year. So having a great showing with this 12th place, and also in 11th place was Gardevoir. So we'll take a look at this list real quick, see if there's any major differences here. We'll see that they're also choosing the Unfair Stamp as their ace spec. A couple little list changes. So they play Manaphy, they play Fluttermane, they've got a 3rd Darkness Energy in there, 2nd Technical Machine De-Evolution instead of the 2nd Bravery Charm. So that can be for the Zard matchup, maybe also the Dragapult matchup, the 2nd TM Devo. It can actually be used in the mirror match as well. If the opponent goes TM Evo first, you can manually evolve your Kirlias, then Devo their Kirlias, which is pretty cool. So yeah, Technical Machine De-Evolution, if Charizard is around, that's a very valuable tool to have. So I imagine they played it in here because of the Charizard matchup. Also playing 1 Enhanced Hammer, able to get rid of something like a Mist Energy so that your Devo goes through, or getting rid of a Legacy Energy on a Lugia. Both uses can be really, really impactful. In 10th place, unfortunately, we have a Dragapult, which the list is not yet published on Limitless. But we do have a Dragapult Pidgeot deck list that we'll look at in just a moment. First, we have another Lugia deck list at 9th. Here we have a Lugia list, again, playing Klefki. Like I said, this seems to be very, very typical almost in the Japanese lists. They've lowered their Chinchino line down from a 3-3 compared to the last one to a 2-2 in this list. And instead of the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, they are playing the Weirdeer V, which could do a lot of damage because of Frontier Road and Psyshield Bash, multiplier of 40, getting up into like the 280, 320 range. We'll notice here that they are not playing any Carmine or Squawkabilly. A lot of times we'll see that lists play either Carmine or Squawkabilly for that turn 1 dig. But we'll notice that there are neither of them in this list, and they're playing 2 Nest Ball and 4 Lugia V, so that Nest Ball can help you get out the Lugia Vs. This is kind of a situation where I think I would drop the 4th Lugia V for Squawkabilly, since they're already playing the 2 Nest Balls. And yeah, other than the Klefki, though, nothing is incredibly unique about this list. So now we've got 8th place Dragapult Pidgeot making it into the top 8 of this almost 5,000 person tournament. And this Dragapult Pidgeot list we'll see does not play the Duskull, Dusclops, Dusknoir line. And I think we're seeing a trend of this in our online events as well, where Dragapult Pidgeot decks are not playing the Duskull, Dusclops, Dusknoir. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around because those cards go so well with this deck. But maybe it will end up being optimal to not play that line. So let's take a look at this list here that got top 8 out of, like I said, almost 5,000 players. So they're playing a pretty thick line of Dragapult, 4-3-3. So that Dracloak is going to be pretty substantial support throughout games, since they're not playing anything like a Bibarel. And they're also sacrificing the Dusknoir line to add in a more of the stage 1 here with Dracloak, which has the Recon Directive ability that can get you an extra card every turn. We'll see that they are playing Cleffa and Rotom, but no Lumineon, which is interesting. And as the Radiant Pokemon of choice, now not all Dragapult lists play a Radiant Pokemon. This one is playing Radiant Alakazam for that Painful Spoons ability. It might seem like it's not enough because Dragapult, can put 6 damage counters out onto the board. And if the opponent has a 70 HP Pokemon, you're going to miss that. So you might think about Hawlucha instead of Radiant Alakazam. But Radiant Alakazam does something really cool, which is it uses damage that's left from previous turns to create threats on future turns. So if you swing into the active and you knock out a benched Pokemon and they bench a 70 HP Pokemon, that damage from their active Pokemon can now be used to help you knock out that single prizer on the bench with Alakazam's Painful Spoons. Of course, this list is playing Sparkling Crystal. No Dragapult Pidgeot deck is complete without it. It's just allowing you to attack for 1 energy, which is really broken. They're not playing Briar in this list, but they are playing Crispin, which is another mode of energy acceleration for Dragapult EX. So yeah, Crispin and Sparkling Crystal really help this deck run more consistently and smoothly and get the attacks off as early as turn 2 much more consistently. Then we have 7th place Regidrago VSTAR. Regidrago VSTAR is far from dead. We'll see here that they are playing a pretty typical list. We've got the 3-3 Regidrago, the 2 Dragapult EX. They're opting to play no Hisuian Goodra VSTAR. They are playing a 3rd Iono and a Penny. Those are not that typical. What I've noticed about the Japanese lists is they play 3 Earthen Vessel. They're almost always playing 3 Earthen Vessel now instead of 4. Which it's hard for me to agree with because Earthen Vessel is a consistency card. It's helping you discard Pokemon to put them into the discard. It's obviously finding you your energy attachments, but it's also finding you energy to attach to Teal Mask Ogerpon that also draws you cards. So it's a multifunctional card. I am not comfortable dropping to 3 now. I remember way back before Worlds, I was trying 3 just to fit more things into my deck, but ultimately I landed on 4 and kept that for Worlds and Baltimore Regionals. So the 3rd Earthen Vessel, I'd like to have a 4th Earthen Vessel. They are playing Penny, which I really wonder how valuable Penny is for them instead of the 4th Earthen Vessel, which is a consistency card that comes up every single game, whereas Penny is not going to come up every single game. But I digress, not to spend too much time there. I think the Canceling Cologne is smart to put back into the deck because Cornerstone Ogerpon is just getting shoved into things to try to wall out Charizard. But yeah, other than that, the big notes here are they do not play Goodra, and I do like Goodra, although it's really good in the mirror match, and that is maybe not as popular right now, so I can see them getting away with cutting it. And I don't really feel that Penny is that valuable over a 4th Earthen Vessel. In 6th place, we have Raging Bolt Ogerpon. This is deemed to be one of the best, if not the best deck in Japan right now. Really simple Pokemon lineup here. Really, no bells and whistles, just keeping it consistent. Same with the energy lineup. That 7th grass energy, something we don't always see. A lot of times there's going to be a 2nd night stretcher in place of the 7th grass. They are playing bravery charms. Some lists have been cutting them. We'll see that in a little bit as well. And also, really notable here is they are not playing Briar. That's something that I've been talking about, that, you know, Raging Bolt Ogerpon gets helped out a lot with Briar. The Zard matchup isn't as bad as it used to be. The Gardevoir matchup isn't as bad as it used to be, but we'll see here. This player that got 6th place in this massive tournament decided not to play Briar. If I'm not playing Briar, I would probably want to play Spiritomb and Judge to help against the Charizard matchup, either one. So Spiritomb Judge helps early game, Briar helps late game, obviously. But I would probably want one of them at least to help in that matchup. So I wonder if the Bravery Charms are worth it over those tech spots to help with the Stage 2 matchups. In 5th place, we've got a pretty new deck. We've got Origin Forme Palkia VSTAR with Terapagos EX, with the new Noctowl. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in this deck. So Origin Forme Palkia VSTAR gets a buff from Area 0 Underdepths. If you have a Terra Pokemon in play, you can have 8 Pokemon on your bench. So you're going to want to bench Terapagos EX. Sometimes we'll also see Wellspring Mask Ogerpon EX in these deck lists, but this one's just playing 2 Terapagos. So if you have a full bench of 8, this Origin Forme Palkia VSTAR Subspace Swell is doing its base of 60, plus another 160 for your 8 benched Pokemon. So that's 220. And if your opponent just has the normal 5 on their bench, that's 320 damage from Origin Forme Palkia VSTAR. Not to mention, you have your Star Portal ability, which can accelerate energy to Radiant Greninja, to use Moonlight Shuriken, to itself to attack, or the other water attacker, which is in this deck, Articuno, with that Wild Freeze attack. You might have forgotten about this one. Wild Freeze for 2 water does 70 damage. It does 50 damage to itself, and then your opponent's active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So against a deck with low switching cards like Charizard or Regidrago VSTAR, or maybe even a deck like Raging Bolt that's run out of its switching cards, paralyzing a Pokemon that can no longer evolve, doesn't have mist energy, the player doesn't have switching cards, it can basically buy you a free turn. So paralysis is a really, really strong special condition. Don't forget about its existence, and it's really cool to see this Articuno featured in the top 8 deck list of Palkia VSTAR Noctowl. And speaking of Noctowl, so this list plays 2/2 Noctowl and 2/2 Bibarel. Noctowl has the ability Jewel Seeker, which when you evolve it from Hoot Hoot into Noctowl, if you have a Terra Pokemon in play, you could search your deck for any 2 trainer cards. This is a broken ability, very, very, very strong. They're also playing Fan Rotom, which can find the Bidoofs, the Hoot Hoots, and the Noctowls, as well as Skwovet. It can find Skwovet as well. And then for other interesting cards here, we've got Briar, of course. So your Terapagos EX can take an extra prize card. And they're also playing One Glass Trumpet, which can accelerate to colorless Pokemon as long as you have Terra in play. And then it also plays 1 energy switch. So you can set up a 2 energy attacking Pokemon like Articuno or Palkia VSTAR or Terapagos EX just out of nowhere thanks to the Glass Trumpet and or the energy switch. In 4th place, we do have another Regidrago VSTAR deck list. This one is also omitting the Hisuian Goodra VSTAR. Like I said, maybe some of the matchups the Hisuian Goodra VSTAR is really good in aren't as popular, notably the mirror match. So like at Worlds, the mirror match was over 20% of the field. So Hisuian Goodra got a lot of value there, similar at Baltimore regionals, but over in Japan, Regidrago VSTAR has been around like the 5, 6, 7% meta share range. So Hisuian Goodra VSTAR seems to not be necessary from these Japanese results. And we'll also see that they're playing Penny. So Penny is looking pretty popular. Is that to pick up the Halucha and reuse it? Is it to just get a Pokemon that's stuck in the active out of there? This list is not playing a switch, so Penny is kind of in place of the switch spot. And then they're playing Temple of Sinnoh and Jamming Tower, which are pretty much the 2 best stadiums for Regidrago VSTAR to play. Also, like I said, 3 Earthen Vessel, pretty common in the Japanese lists to only play 3 Earthen Vessel. I'm kind of still a fan of 4, but maybe I'll try it. These lists are trying to convince me to go down the 3 Earthen Vessel. All the way up to 3rd place now, we've got another Charizard Pidgeot deck list. This one's not going to be too different from the other one. Instead of the double Rotom Lumineon, they do have the 1 Rotom, 1 Lumineon, 1 Cleffa. They are omitting the double turbo energy, which I am fine with dropping double turbo energy. Definitely keeping the mist energy. Mist energy is really good. They're playing Jamming Tower, so they can kind of satisfy Lost Vacuum and a Stadium at the same time, so that they're not playing the Lost Vacuum as well. Although I do really like Pokemon League Headquarters as a Stadium choice in Charizard because it's good against Raging Bolt. And we will also notice in this list they're playing Prime Catcher instead of Unfair Stamp. So they're going to have more Shuffle Draw supporters. They have 3 Iono and 1 Roxanne to make up for not having the Unfair Stamp in there. They have also got the new Briar card in there, so that they can take an extra prize card with Charizard potentially. And playing the TM Devo, you'll see that they drop down to just 1 Counter Catcher because they have Prime Catcher as their ace spec, which is pretty typical. And 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Buddy, and 3 Nest, playing a whole lot of Pokemon Search, probably blindly choosing first with all of that Pokemon Search as well. Up to the 2nd place list, we've got Lugia getting 2nd place in late 2024. Lugia will not be stopped by anything but the rotation at this point. We've got another pretty typical Lugia VSTAR deck list. Nothing to write home about here. They've got 3-3 Lugia VSTAR. They've got Blood Moon, Ursaluna, and Iron Hands. 3-2 line of Chinchino. We've seen 2-2, 3-3, and 3-2 throughout this top 16 recap. So just play some amount of Chinchino and you're fine, is what I'm understanding here. They've got Thornton. I really like Thornton and Lugia. I think it's really strong. They're not playing Carmine, but that's okay. Like I said, I would probably play a Squawk if you're not playing Carmine. But they are playing Pheasantipity, another support Pokemon that's not always an include in Lugia. But other than that, nothing too special here. So we're going to just hop into the 1st place list, which is Raging Bolt Ogerpon. We already looked at a Raging Bolt Ogerpon list, but the difference between the 1st place list and the top 8 list is that the 1st place list is playing Briar. The 1st place list is also playing a 3rd Pokestop. They're playing a 2nd and 3rd Night Stretcher, and they are not playing any Bravery Charm. So they're playing things like 3rd Night Stretcher, Lost Vacuum, 3rd Pokestop, Briar. And you know, the Bravery Charms are just some of the cards that are being cut there in the process. So if you want a good Raging Bolt Ogerpon deck list, look no further than the one that won a 5,000 person event. Raging Bolt Ogerpon, like I said, it's either the best or one of the best decks in Japan right now. Ogerpon is really consistent at putting energy on the board, drawing cards. Raging Bolt EX can do unlimited amounts of damage, and the deck is built pretty streamlined with a couple of new tools like the Briar, take an extra prize card, the Lost Vacuum to get through annoying tools or get stadiums out of the way. Really streamlined looking list and a very strong low to the ground archetype. I'm not surprised it was able to take down this major event. Thanks to Limitless TCG for compiling these deck lists and results. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon TCG content. Check out ways down in the description to support my content, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.